Thanks very much, Adam. So I'm eating into your tea break, which is going to make me instantly unpopular. Let's see if I can make myself yet more unpopular with the content. So I've been asked to talk about making healthier choices with FoodSwitch. I'm an academic, so I'm in the minority, so I think that means you have to treat me especially nicely. Being an academic, I am going to kick off with a conflict of interest statement. I am the chair of the Australian Division of World Action on Salt and Health, and I hold views about salt in food. I have had research funding from the Australian Food and Grocery Council as part of an NHMRC project grant. And I am a past member of the PepsiCo Global Scientific Advisory Board and went to the US a couple of times to advise on what they might do, although I did quit that when it seemed like it wasn't going to achieve much. Finally, I should have put Bupa up there, who have been a significant sponsor of the FoodSwitch application that I'll talk about. So, FoodSwitch is a smartphone application. If you don't have it on your phone, you can download it. It's free. It's in iOS or Android. Sorry. You can download it, you open it. Basically what it does is it lets you scan the barcode of any packaged food in Australia. What it will do is, as you put the camera over it, it'll acquire the barcode automatically, and it will pop up for you a display that looks something like that. And what that is the traffic light label, much hated by the food industry, much loved by public health. It shows green good, red bad, and amber middling for fats, sugars, salt. And over the right-hand side, it has energy grayed out. I'm sure that most of you are very familiar with that. What we believe that does is it lets people see at a glance what's in the food. We went one step further and we used the nutrient profiling mechanism that Kevin spoke about to identify similar but healthier alternative products in the same food category and listed them directly underneath. And you can see there how that works. Now, I'll come back to FoodSwitch in a minute. It is, however, Salt Awareness this week, for any of those that you don't know. Quick promo. The reason we have things like Salt Awareness Week, the reason we're having this meeting, the reason we have things like FoodSwitch is because of this. And again, you're probably very familiar with this, but diet-related ill health, dietary risks, are now the leading cause of death and disability in the world. I could show you the same slide there for disability adjusted life years, for total disease burden, and for Australia. And the pattern would be basically identical. You can see that dietary risks are above smoking. Now, that's not because smoking isn't that bad for you. It's because not everyone, fortunately, smokes. And in Australia, we've actually done a pretty good job getting people off cigarettes. What we haven't done is really anything about dietary risks, and almost everyone in Australia, and in fact almost everyone in the world, eats a diet that is suboptimal and in some way bad for them. And that's why dietary risks sit at the top there, and that's why we have to do something about dietary risks if we want to get serious about preventing death and disability around the world. So what are the sorts of dietary risks we're talking about? I won't go over them, we're short of time, but it's the sorts of things we've heard: low fruits and vegetables, too much salt, not enough nuts and seeds, etc., etc. Now, one of the things that we've done with FoodSwitch is try to recognise that there are a whole bunch of people out there with clinical conditions where they're trying to pick a particular diet. They're trying to eat low salt because they've got high blood pressure. They're trying to eat low fat because they've got dyslipidemia. So we took FoodSwitch a step further from just recommending foods that were generally healthier. We put in a little filters function up the top there in the right-hand corner, and you can now choose from having the standard FoodSwitch or SaltSwitch, which will identify foods that are specifically lower in salt if you're a hypertensive person. There's also gluten switch. I wanted to call it glute switch, but people weren't sure how that would fly. But that will find you gluten-free foods if you've got celiac disease or are gluten intolerant. We have diabetes switch, fat switch, and a bunch of others in the pipeline. And we're also looking at things such as country of origin and the like, which we know customers are also very interested in. So here you can see that if you do select the SaltSwitch filter, it shows you that at the top, and then it will actually pick foods there which are primarily lower in salt level. I mentioned there that we do have a bunch of other filters planned and that will roll out over the coming months and years. In terms of Food Switch, what are the key outcomes to date? Well, when we launched it, it was ridiculously popular. It became the most popular free app in the App Store and stayed there for 2 days, knocking even games off. And we hadn't appreciated at the time how much interest there would be from Australian consumers in this. And I think this is something that's really important for us to recognise. People want this sort of information. And if they can't get it on the packages, they will seek out different methods. It has had now nearly 500,000 downloads in Australia. People update it, the media write about it, social media circulate information about it, and it's been so successful here in Australia. We've had a lot of requests to do it elsewhere in the world. So far we've just managed New Zealand and the UK, but we do have rollouts planned in a number of other big markets. However, Food Switch is not the solution to diet-related ill health, or even the solution to food labelling in Australia. If we want people to see what's in foods, we have to have information that is actually printed on the package in the way that Kevin was describing on everything, so that people have got the information right there in front of them. They don't have to pick up their phone, they don't have to download an app, they don't have to scan the barcode and then interpret the information. We have to have it on everything. It's also not going to resolve diet-related ill health, because while 500,000 downloads is not bad for a smartphone app, there's probably only a few tens of thousands of people who actually use it regularly. Only a few thousands of them, if we're lucky, will actually make a change. You know, it's not going to have that population-wide impact to change something which is the #1 cause of death and disability in Australia. And the real challenge we have is that we have a food industry which quite legitimately is out there trying to maximise profits, shift volume, and give shareholders the best possible value they can. And what the food industry isn't out there to do is to make people healthy, primarily. It does appear in the list of things to do, but it usually, and quite reasonably, because it's an industry, it appears low down the list. Health doesn't make profit. Now, that said, there are a few enlightened companies, and I really enjoy talking to those companies, and I really enjoy trying to work with those companies who want to do something in this space. And they're to be applauded and encouraged. But the problem is, unless everyone does it, it's not going to work. And I think the PepsiCo example that I spoke about earlier is a prime example of that. We had there a CEO who genuinely wanted to do something. So what did she do? She spent money trying to make health, trying to put sustainability into the company. What did that do? It made the products cost more. You had to put better quality product in. You don't shift as much of it because it's not as habituating and addictive as something that's got a whole load of salt and fat. Shareholders' value goes down, price goes down, share price goes down, and the whole thing gets ripped out of the company. That's what will happen if companies go it alone. I hate to say it, but that's what will happen. What we have to have is a level playing field that enables those companies that want to do it and to make money out of it, and it drags along those companies that don't want to do it. I see the AFGC as a significant challenge, and perhaps the biggest challenge to public health in this country at the moment, because what the AFGC does is it does a great job for its clients, maximising their profitability, maximising shareholder value. But what it does is it tends to drag everything down to the lowest common denominator, and health misses out. We have to somehow enable these sorts of industry groups to actually do things and drive things for their members that enable them to make money and to make health. And ultimately, I believe the only way that is going to happen is when governments stop focusing on individual responsibility, stop focusing on voluntary arrangements, and put in place some sort of regulation that enables a levelling of the playing field and everyone to take part in a balanced way. So before I finish, just to come back to Food Switch quickly, the really interesting thing about Food Switch for us was that it actually worked best when it didn't work. So when you scanned a product and it came up, we don't have that product in the database, we thought, well, let's appeal to people's better nature. Let's ask them to take a photograph of the front and a photograph of the back. And we were blown away by the response. Within 24 hours, we'd received 26,000 photographs. And 2 years after launch, we still get 500 photographs every day of all the new things that are on the market. And what this has done is enabled us to, at very low cost, crowdsource an almost entirely complete, entirely contemporary copy of the Australian food supply. And what this enables us to do is actually to look, and you don't need to read the numbers here, but what it enables us to do is to look by corporation, by individual company, what were their salt levels of their products in 2008? What are they in 2011? And are they green? Have they gone down? Or are they red and have they gone up? And to use this sort of information in our discussions with companies to try and push them to do the right thing. So we were asked to provide some gaps and some opportunities. To finish, here are the gaps that I see. I think we need food labelling that is primarily about health and sustainability, not just sales, profits and shareholder value. I see the work that Kevin's doing as absolutely central to that. We need leadership on food labelling that has morals and integrity, and it's comprised of unconflicted people making transparent decisions in the public interest. And if you put this in place, you can change things. This is what the UK achieved. And in the UK, average salt levels in food are 10 to 15% lower than they are here in Australia across the board. And interestingly, they didn't have to regulate. They did threaten that they would regulate, and industry, I think, believed that. But no business went out of business. They still make money. They still sell bread. They still sell cheese. But they just sell salt, bread and cheese with a whole bunch less salt and fat. And they save thousands of strokes and heart attacks every year as a consequence. In terms of the third gap, we need to move beyond measures that rely on individuals making the right choice. Here I would fundamentally disagree with what the Minister said at the beginning. If we focus only on trying to persuade individuals to do the right thing, we are doomed to failure. Australia is not a nation of sloths and gluttons determined to get as fat as they can. They're responding to a food environment which has changed radically over the last 20 years, and it has made them fat. And only when we change the food environment, as we're talking about here, will things actually get better. So what are the opportunities? Standard front of pack labelling on all foods, mandatory. If we're going to persist with voluntary mechanisms of rollout for these sorts of interventions, then we have to have voluntary mechanisms that comply with the basic standards recommended by the ACCC for the implementation and the rollout and the monitoring and the innovation of these sorts of mechanisms. Otherwise, we're doomed to failure. We don't have that at the moment. And we need front-of-pack labelling integrating into the activities of the broader food and health dialogue, as Nuala alluded to. And in fact, I wrote to all the health and territory ministers, all the state and territory ministers for health 18 months ago. All of them said what we're doing about diet-related ill health is the food and health dialogue. It's the only game in town at the moment in Australia. We have to beef that up. We have to make that work. On that note, I'll stop and let you go.